Yeah, so the way I teach business law,
Yeah, the way I teach business law is I say create a business day one. Then we walk you through formation and all the way through dissolution, hiring employees, contracts, risk negotiations, all the stuff you'll deal with in the real world, as opposed to like study these 45 cases and then regurgitate, make sure something you deal with, and Falls Drive versus Long Island Railroad, product liability, force liability, foreseeability. No, who gives a rat's?
You go into like different product lines and stuff like that.
We will for each person, and there's no tests, it's just short paper / presentations, so it's not, it's, because again, the way that business law has traditionally been taught is it's been taught by lawyers. Yeah, which is awful. I mean, not that I'm considering myself a lawyer. It's taught by lawyers, and it's taught like we learned in law school, which is memorize case, identify issues, identify why these issues don't meet this case, or what's different between this case and that case, and what when I say McPherson DPUA, product liability. And it needs to be a line between the product and I'm like, no one cares, and you're gonna forget. Hell, I forgot most of them. And so you kind of go, look, what do you need in business law? What do you need? How do I start a business? How do I negotiate a contract? How do I negotiate a lease? How do I hire people? How do I fire people? How do I make sure the IRS doesn't knock down my door? How do I make sure I don't get in trouble with OSHA or M&I? And then when my business goes bad, what are my options? Well, how do you, yeah, and again, you with partnerships and investors and that kind of stuff. So that's how, and so it's a hybrid, so it's gonna be Tuesdays. I'll do let's talk about the law, and then the next class is gonna be apply it to your business, and let's review how it applies to your business, then let's talk about the law, and then how it applies to your business, and we'll walk through each one of those components. First couple classes are gonna be Law 101, which is here's the U.S. legal system, here's how the U.S. legal system works, here's shell type of stuff, and then we'll slide right into here's how let's start applying it to your business. It's going to go completely split. It's a lot of work. The entire set of books is going to cost you, if you buy them used on Amazon, $7. As of right now, you got Law 101, which you can buy for a penny plus shipping. Wow. You've got the ABA, so the American Bar Association Small Business Legal Guide, which you can buy for $3. And you've got a book on ethics, and that ethics book will be bought for a couple bucks. And so you're into it. You're not getting stupid case books. It costs you $300. You can never look at it again, because learning law like you learn in law school for business school wasn't easy. And the only reason I know that is because I've now done both. Most law school professors have never been to business school. Most business school people have never been to law school. And the law school professors, or the business law professors you normally get in business school, have never been to business school. They went to law school and then decided to teach business law. So they teach it like they learned it in law school, which is case method. Not case method like Harvard Business School case method, which is actually closer to this. The case method like memorize 14 cases, regurgitate, what are the elements of the contract? Offer, acceptance, consideration. No, you don't need to memorize that. I mean, we'll talk about it, but yes, it's on the web. It's the carry forward of the last class. So there's no new PowerPoint. It's the old PowerPoint. It's not new. So let's get into, since we only have a little under an hour before I leave, what happens when a bank goes bad? People get fired. So what happens when I say bank goes bad? What does that mean?
They can't lend the money, and they can't pay the money that people are requesting back that they deposited.
Yeah, there's two ways a bank can go bad. What's the biggest liability generally on a bank balance sheet? No, deposits. The loans, your loans are their assets. Your deposits are their liabilities. Their biggest liability is deposits. So there's two ways a bank can go bad. Way one is you have a liquidity crunch. You have a run on the bank. So they've got plenty of assets, plenty of liabilities. They got plenty of assets. They got a lot of loans. But all of a sudden, you got people wanting their liabilities paid off right away. And so, yeah, they come in and they go, I want my cash. You go, okay, here's your cash, here's your cash, here's your cash. Oh, crap, I don't have enough cash. So what do? They go get what?
You borrow from third.
A loan from who? The
Fed.
Fed. So they get a loan from the Fed. The Fed hands them some more cash. They hand out more cash. At some point, they've got a problem. Because essentially the cash is all going out. The bank can go bad in relative short order because of the run. Because the Fed is only going to loan them money up to a certain point. And then the Fed's going to go, you got a more fundamental problem. Well, you got a more fundamental problem generally because you don't have liquidity. That liquidity is generally driven by one of two things. The first one is it's a short-term run. The second one would be what? If you think about the assets, what's yeah, so
interest rates went up and they're in a bad position. They're not getting in what they're paying.
yeah, you could have a situation where you've got a liquidity, you've got a mismatch on your interest rates. So all of a sudden you're going net interest margin negative. And that's happened in the past, although we talked about the risk management steps you can take, securitization, floating rate loans, time deposits to be able to time those out. But what generally, when a bank goes bad, what generally causes it to go bad? Is it the liability side of their balance sheet? It's the asset side. What on the asset side goes bad?
Too many loans.
Too many loans that
They don't get paid.
default, that aren't getting repaid. So think about it this way, there's two ways to think about it, but it all comes back to finance. It all comes back to finance. So the assets on the bank's loan side are generally treated, they're booked at face value. So I loan Eddie $100,000. I put on my asset side, debit, loan to Eddie $100,000, credit cash $100,000, but he gets $100,000 in cash. If interest rates go up, on my accounting books, how much is that loan on the books for?
The limit's the same.
$100,000. Unless I've got a mark to market on those loans, probably don't. It's there for $100,000. Unless Eddie doesn't start paying. But if interest rates go up and I were to sell that loan, securitize it, is it worth more or less than $100,000? Less. So that kind of gets to where Chuck was talking about. All of a sudden, interest rates start rising. There's two ways to think about it. The first one is you have loans in default. So you have loans in default, everything's going a heck in a handbasket, folks aren't making payments. The real value of those assets, the real value of those loans is what? This is finance. What's the value of an asset? The present value of the expected future cash flows. Discounted at the required rate of return as determined by CAPM. So, because I had to get it in.
Don't forget to write the contract.
Let it go.
I had to get it in every class. And so what you got is when interest rates rise, the real value of the assets on the bank's balance sheet begin to fall. However, the cost of their liabilities begins to rise because they're time deposits. They have to pay more, they have to pay more interest. The amount of new loans, the interest rate on new loans goes up to the market rate, but the old loans that are still sitting on their books, the present value of those begins to fall. And that gives you the hardcore finance answer for what Chuck was talking about, where you have a liquidity mismatch or you have a timing mismatch. Essentially, you can have a bank effectively go bad because the present value of the loans that are on their books begins to decline faster than the liability side of their books declines. Matter of fact, liabilities may be going up because their net interest margin starts going upside down.
I have to ask this, I'm sorry, I'm still looking. Wouldn't that loan that they loan out, that $1,000 that they loan out, wouldn't that be more value to them because the interest rate goes up, so they have to pay more money back, so not only.
Well, I'm assuming a fixed rate loan.
Okay,
I'm assuming fixed rate loans.
alright. You understand my confusion now?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
On the deposit side, the interest rate's going up.
okay.
On the asset side, for the bank, the interest rate's fixed. The other time that it happens is you have a situation, I think, as Keith had mentioned, where you say, okay, I've got defaults. The economy starts going bad, that loan, the expected future cash flows on that loan start going down because the guy stopped making payments, or he's making partial payments, or he's late on a bunch of payments, and so all of a sudden the present value starts going down. What ends up happening when the asset side is less than the liability side, what happens?
Upside down all of a sudden.
You're upside down. When your equity is 0 or below, the FDIC will come in and shut you down. The FDIC will come in and shut the bank down. As a matter of fact, under Basel 1, 2, and 3, which we're going to talk about tonight, once your equity percentage drops below a certain level, the FDIC can come in and start tightening controls and or shut you down. So they don't even wait until you're essentially technically bankrupt. They'll look at things like instead of going from an accounting perspective, these things are still sitting on my books for $100,000, but I haven't marked them down yet. The regulators will look at them as the present value of expected future cash flows for each of those loans on the books. They will analyze them loan by loan by loan when they're doing the analysis and go, how many are late? How many are late more than 30 days? How many are late more than 60 days? What's reserves on those? And they'll start marking them down. Even if they're not marked down for GAAP purposes, they'll be marked down for regulatory purposes, and the regulators will come in and seize the bank. So you can have a bank that looks unhealthy but still solvent, and the FDIC can come in and seize it because when they do the loan by loan analysis, the present value, the expected future cash flows of those loans is so low that they couldn't liquidate them and still pay off the depositors. And so the federal government says, we've got FDIC, we protect the depositors up to $250,000, so we're seizing the bank, we're liquidating the assets, we're paying the depositors off. So what happens when a bank goes bad? The equity gets wiped out. Losses cause reserves to be exhausted. So every time a loan gets made at a bank, they go, oh, there's a chance this loan's going to go bad. Maybe there's a 1% chance. So they run their FICO score, and their FICO score is an 880 or an 840. They go, oh, there's a 1% chance the loan's going to go bad. So I loan maybe $1,000, and there's a 1% chance it's going to go bad. I put the reserve for $10. And then I run any credit in 2 years and go, well, it's still 1%, and now the loan's down $800, so I put $8 as a reserve. If all of a sudden that loan goes bad, I've got a bigger loss than $8. I've got a $792 loss unexpected. So what ends up happening is, if too many of those unexpected consequences and probabilities start to hit, and that generally happens when you have a recession, because things like credit scores and the loss models lag, because it hasn't happened yet, so all of a sudden you start seeing losses and you go, crap, I got to dial up my reserves because I'm starting to see losses. That first set of losses, it lags your existing model. You're cranking along, you're doing fine, all of a sudden the recession hits, losses start piling up, you don't have enough reserves, you got to put more reserves in. As soon as those losses start to outpace your reserves, you can wipe out your equity. And all of a sudden, from an accounting perspective, you're upside down. Does that make sense? Does it also make sense that it lags? So your reserves are kind of based upon your existing experience. And so when things start going bad, your existing experience hasn't been bad. So as a result, you got to ramp it up. The next thing that happens is the government shows up. So they're monitoring all this stuff. They're looking at banks going, okay, they're making loans at the Fed discount window. And they're going, who's hitting the Fed? Who's hitting the Fed crack and taking money out? What banks are kind of, and we're gonna talk about camels, but what banks are, from the last couple sets of visits, aren't looking too hot? And then they start looking at behaviors, they start looking at funds flows deposits, because when you wanna take money out of a bank, how do you do it? How do you make a withdrawal from your bank account?
Do I gonna draw it?
Yeah, you write out a withdrawal slip, you write a check, you use an ATM card. Every one of those transactions is reported up through the Fed funds system. So the Fed's looking at all the transactions, money in, money out of every bank, every day. It's all reported every day. And they're able to look at, are we seeing changes in patterns of behavior? Are we seeing runs on banks? Are we seeing loans that are starting to go bad because you're making loan payments, the bank is reporting in the loan payments? Or basically, there's not many secrets at a bank except for camels are scored. So the government will step in and seize the bank. And like I said, they could come in early. The goal of the government is to anticipate the failure and come in as early as possible, but not too early. And the reason not too early is they're going to wipe out the equity. Shareholders are going to sue if the government comes in too early, except for maybe sovereign immunity. But shareholders are going to go, hey, you can't wipe this out. Bank's still good. The taxpayer goes, I want you to go early so that you're not using taxpayer money to bail the bank out. The bank is using its own assets to bail the bank out, and the depositors out. You're not having to hit the FDIC for insurance money. So the government's going to come in, it's going to seize the bank. It's going to assess, and this is, I had two people that worked for me, worked for the FDIC, they then didn't work for me, now they went back to work for the FDIC. One down in Texas, she worked for FISLIC actually, which was absorbed by the FDIC, which is Federal Savings and Loan Insurance Corporation. At 4:48 at night or 5 o'clock at night, they come rolling into the bank.
4:40 in the afternoon?
Yep. Right as the bank's getting ready to close, the FDIC is just like the flipping FBI on the drug raid. They all hit all the branches at once. They walk in just before they close. They have letters for the branch manager, and they say, this bank is now being seized by the FDIC. They put little things on the wall and on the door. They lock the doors. And then they spend all night figuring out what the hell the bank has. And then they open the next morning and start paying out depositors. So it's this overnight kind of, it's kind of like a raid, coordinated all over, and all the branches, we're all coming in and close everything down and take the bank over. Now, normally, folks can anticipate that this might be coming, but you never quite know exactly when.
So you gotta call it home. They gotta come in the bank tomorrow and get all the money that goes down.
No,
It's insured at the 200.
it's insured.
Right, I get that.
It'll make the news. I can assure you, it'll make the news.
How do they pay your everyday people off like that?
So starting the next day, people can begin to transact, and this is actually the next bullet.
You catch on the news.
Yeah.
Yep.
You call your boss, you're gonna be late.
How many of you guys are
Yeah, so normally, and if
Maybe I'll learn
you guys are
everything.
like we're at Anchor Bank or any of the local banks that got shut down during the last crisis, basically, you don't know it as a depositor, and they don't want you to know it until after it happens. Because they don't want to run on the bank ahead of time. So they go, okay, we're in here, and they'll announce, and they'll do it through the news, and they'll do it through announcements on the webpage and on the phone recording stuff. You know, everything will be open for business. Your accounts are insured with $250,000. The FDIC is now in receivership of Bank XYZ. The deposits and other assets, so kind of to answer your question, Bill, the last bank that had this happen to them here in beautiful upstate New York, beautiful Washington State, that I knew about, that I knew well, was Frontier Bank. So for those of you who have been here a while, Frontier Bank used to be one of the biggest banks out here. Frontier, before that was Walmart, that was a big one. Frontier was the one that is most recent.
Really? I thought it was only one.
Huh?
I didn't know, I thought it was just one.
Oh, no, there's been a lot of banks. There's the Anchor Bank down in Olympia. There's 2 or 3 Olympia banks like that too. So what they did was they said, okay, the Fed knew this was coming, or the FDIC knew this was coming, ahead of time, they negotiated the sale of the bank to Union Bank. And so they seized the bank, calculated everything that was there, and then said, on Monday, the 1st of July, all Frontier Bank branches are going to be Union Bank branches, run by Union Bank, administered by Union Bank. They bought the deposits, they bought the loans, they bought the bank buildings, they bought everything. And the FDIC takes all that money and either pays it out and they assume all the liabilities of the deposits. And if there's any money left over, which there won't be, it'll go to the shareholders, the bondholders and the shareholders, like a normal liquidation. And if there isn't enough money left over, then the federal government will come in and backfill up to $250,000 per deposit. So normally, they know what's going to happen ahead of time. They know what banks are healthy and are interested in getting into those markets because the FDIC is working with them. And they go, hey, how would you like to buy Frontier Bank, that 120 branch bank in Washington State? And they go, okay, great. How much do I have to pay for it? Well, a couple $1 million. And assume all the liabilities. So now the taxpayers off scot-free, right? Because this healthy bank just assumed all the liabilities and the deposits of the bank that just failed. They've got the loans, or maybe some of the loans. Maybe the bad loans they don't want to take, so the government says, well, we'll take those loans. We'll package them up and sell them to somebody else. But essentially, their preferred approach is to have a prepackaged sale ready to go. They walk in, they see the bank, they turn the keys over to another bank within a week. And that's their preferred approach. And then they use all the proceeds from that sale to pay out the creditors, depositors, trade creditors, depositors first, trade creditors, bondholders, stockholders, if there's anything left. And it goes in normal liquidation preference. Banks can't file bankruptcy.
Really? Isn't it crazy?
Banks cannot file bankruptcy. There is a proposal before Congress to create a chapter in the bankruptcy code to allow banks to file bankruptcy. But as of now, they can't file bankruptcy. Basically, yes, there's no way for a bank to file bankruptcy and reorganize like you could under Chapter 11. Banks are solvent or solvent, they're liquidated by the federal government. And if they're solvent, they're allowed to continue to operate. But they can't reorganize. You can't go through bankruptcy and reorganize. So the proceeds are used to pay off creditors just like they would be in bankruptcy. And the FDIC guarantees depositors up to statutory limits, apparently $250,000 per depositor. Sometimes the FDIC has gone higher because they want to prevent a panic. The old limits used to be $50,000, and it was $100,000, and then it went to $250,000. And I believe there was a point in time during the banking crisis where they increased to $500,000, or where they said in certain bank situations, we'll guarantee all deposits, which they can do. And their rationale for it is we're trying to prevent a run on the bank, we're trying to prevent massive losses, and it's going to create a local economy. Or we've got another bank, like in WAMU's case, we've got JP Morgan Chase, it's going to take over the bank's liability, so we can guarantee up to a certain amount. Now, JP Morgan will go, yeah, we want you to give us a bunch of money to take, in some cases, the bank that's taking over the bank gets paid to do it.
Yeah. Wow.
So if the liabilities are too high and the assets are too low, there's a hole.
So okay then.
And so the FDIC goes, okay, here's what we're going to do. JP Morgan Chase, you're going to take over WAMU, and we're going to give you $300 million. So you get WAMU plus $300 million. Now, you get WAMU's all their liabilities. You get all their assets. Their junk loans, you get the big argument over how much are those junk loans worth because Chase goes, they're worth nothing. I want cash now for the value of those, but I'll keep them just in case. And then you've got the government goes, here's what the collateral's worth. So that's when you go back and study, and I know a couple of you look at the 08 banking crisis. When you look at it, some of the biggest areas of negotiation were around the value of the assets, which is why the federal government created TARP. You remember the TARP things, and they would go buy these assets. So there's Troubled Asset Relief Program, TARP. And the federal government went out and said, okay, you guys, we gotta come up with some value for these assets, we're gonna take them off your books. We're gonna hope that they're worth more than we're paying you for, so we're gonna pay you a little bit for these assets, we're gonna collect the profit on them. And, because we need to get these bank assets sold. So we think they're worth 100 million, you think they're worth 20 million. Okay, we'll assume they're worth 20 million, we'll buy them. And then we'll plug the hole with cash over on your side. And we're gonna hope that we make enough on those things to fill that cash hole up plus some. So that's the troubled asset relief program part. They require a bunch of assets. The Fed bought a bunch of loans. The Fed said big gobs of money, that's those bailout money, so big gobs of money, these banks going, okay, we're gonna have to top up to 250,000 per depositor. That's all the liabilities you assume. You're not assuming the bonds, you're not assuming the shareholders, you're not assuming the trade liabilities. You're gonna assume the leases on the buildings, and you're gonna assume to the extent you want, otherwise they get shut down, and you're gonna assume all the deposits. And we'll reimburse you up to $250,000 per depositor. So we'll start shuffling money over to the bank. So that's where, when you hear bank bailouts, that's what it was. But essentially, they were taking solvent banks and saying, assume all the deposit liabilities. We got to plug a hole for you, so we're going to bail you out by shoveling cash at you. That's the traditional way. In 2008, the government used a different approach. So they used that approach and then realized that approach might not work well, one. And two, we were creating a bunch of have-not banks. Those have banks might be getting the stuff at a real discount, and then they're going to prosper. And we're going to get walloped by the voters, because all of a sudden we allowed these big Wall Street banks to be prosperous. We prop them up we just gave them money. We don't have cash. So what they did was they bought preferred stock in those banks. So if the banks were teetering on the edge of collapse, they said, okay, we're going to provide government equity. But the government can't own the bank. So we're going to buy preferred stock in the bank. So we're going to go down in the capital stack, above common stock, but below depositors, and we're going to inject equity. Now we're going to get you back up to where you've got enough equity in your bank. And we're going to charge you preferred dividends, preferred rate of interest on that money. And when you get healthy again, you're going to pay us back. So then you got TARP funds, TARP 2, and those funds were investments directly into fragile banks to prop up their balance sheets on the equity side.
So, those banks who are really like one that really went bad and gone, do they went through their process, like did they get bailed for a little bit?
WaMu went through the first process I talked about, where it was sold to Chase the day before they seized it. They seized it, it became Chase like that.
So why is the government didn't bail them out?
Too big,
Oh, okay.
too big. But WaMu was one of the first ones that went bad. And it was over time that they started going, oh my God, we can't just keep doing this, because we're going to create these giant mega banks, which already exist. We kind of talked about the banking consolidation. So they said, okay, we're going to start propping up banks directly with TARP funds. So Chase took TARP funds, Wells took TARP funds, almost everybody took them. Even banks didn't need them, the Fed kind of twisted their arms and you will take it, so that it takes a stigma away from having TARP funds on their books. So that's what happens when a bank goes bad. It's not free. Matter of fact, it's kind of an ugly thing. But normally for the depositors and for the folks who have loans, all of a sudden it's like, okay, your bank is not acquired by this bank, and you just keep going. I was a WaMu person. So I had my accounts in WaMu, all of a sudden they became Chase accounts.
Yeah, and the same account number, everything.
Yes. And that's generally what they, and then everybody, most of the employees are the same. And they just go, okay, you're now getting your paycheck from Chase, and you're now, here you go, have a nice day, because they need them to run the bank.
I was alone yesterday. Okay. That was a bad one.
So insurance and moral hazard. So in a bank run, what happens when consumers start pulling all their money out of the bank? Yeah, so what happens?
More people start pulling it.
Yeah, so what did the government do?
Close the bank.
So in response to this back in the 30s, what did the government do?
Until the bank stopped giving out money.
Yeah, so what they did was they did a bank holiday. They shut banks for like a week. I said, okay, you can't get your money out. And then we're gonna reopen. And they had the FDIC. So what happens on a bank run is consumers start pulling all their money out of the bank, and it creates this liquidity strain on the bank, because all of a sudden they're like, crap, I don't have enough cash. And most of my money, again, kind of going through It's a Wonderful Life. Well, I want my money. Well, your money is in Joe's house.
Hey, Joe, give it back to
It's in
me.
the mattress.
Hey, Joe, your deposits are in Eddie's house.
Well,
That's how it works. I don't have your money here, it's in Eddie's house. Jimmy Stewart. You know, so that.
It's okay, it's
We're in the joke.
So that's what happens, is there's no cash, the cash gets lent back out in the form of loans or other things. And so it creates a liquidity strain on the bank, and so the bank says, oh crap. We can't pay, we're gonna close. Because I can't go get the money out of Eddie's house, because it's owned by that money went to the builder, and that builder paid the mortgage and the suppliers, and then bought himself a new Ferrari. And paid the IRS. So, maybe. Ferrari's a company car. And so the FDIC was put in place in the 30s because we wanted to eliminate the probability of a run on banks. We said, hey, look, you can leave your money in here up to $1,000, up to $50,000, $45,000, $50,000. $250 million, and it's okay. We're the federal government, we'll do it more. So you don't need to worry about it, we'll give you your money. So now it takes that liquidity strain away, because even if I told you that when I was driving down here today, I drove past Navy Federal Credit Union and the FDIC or the NCUA was shutting it down. And you're like, crap, I got my accounts at Navy Federal.
Is this for real?
No.
You're scared me. I will be there tomorrow.
But you don't need to be scared, because the NCUA guarantees your money up to $250,000.
Yeah,
It's insured, so you're fine, unless you got over 250, in which case, let's talk. I'll come up with a strategy for you on how to manage it. But, so they did that because it takes away that, oh my God, are you serious? No. The bank run right now, because Charlotte was going to head down there and tell 40 people on the way. Holy cow! Sir,
I'll be there like on Friday.
Way better.
So this creates a moral hazard.
Why?
Why? Why does it create a moral hazard?
In the backside?
Sure, I said on whose part, so I'll take the bank. Sure, why does it create a moral hazard?
Okay, he's looking at you.
No, I'm looking at you. I know I'm cross-eyed a little bit, but you know.
I'm not ready to answer, I'm sorry.
Not ready.
Is it because since they know, the banks know that their deposits or whatever, all the money paid out is insured, the hazard for them to do the right thing or the wrong thing is higher because they know they have, basically, they know that their people are, that money is insured, so they feel like they can risk a little bit more with their money.
Yes.
They'll extend themselves.
And what happens if those risks pay off?
You'll just do it again.
He's looking at you.
They get bonuses, and the stock price goes up, and their options are worth more, and the stockholders get all excited because the dividends go up. This is awesome. The federal government has absorbed some of the risk for the bank, and the bank goes, "That's great. I'm just going to put the throttle down, because if I screw up, I'm going to use business judgment rule." We talked about that. Where, well, it was legitimate stuff. I overwrote it. Maybe it was a little aggressive, but I used my judgment. There was a rational basis to do this. And so it went bad. I'm sorry, no jail. I get to keep my bonus. I get to keep the Ferrari. I'll go get a job in the bank. In the meantime, the depositor goes, what? Give me my money back, and who gives it back?
Yes.
The feds. So what if I said, Charlotte, here's the deal,
Funny.
FDIC insured. You can go to the Bank of Ed,
Okay.
and I'll give you 4% interest on your savings account. Or you can go to US Bank, and I'll give you 0.5% interest on your savings account. On the first $100,000.
What's the interest rate after $100,000?
I'm only gonna take up to 100 grand. I'm gonna limit her deposit to $100,000. I might limit it to $249,000. So Charlotte, you can deposit with me, 4%, FDIC insured, $249,000 savings account. Or you can deposit with the US Bank and Joe over there, 0.5%, $249,000. Which one are you gonna choose?
Choosing a $250,000 back FDIC and then
I will always do.
Right.
Well, both are insured by FDIC, right?
Yeah, both are insured by FDIC.
That interest rate changed.
I know.
So,
Right, only
Yeah.
4%. Oh, wait a minute.
for 200,000 and then so you go to the $250,000 back at the IC amount, then comes in.
No, Ed has better, he got 4%. I don't have that.
Yeah, what if we forget the 4%?
Right.
You can only get back
That's what I said.
What?
You can only get back.
Because you have to pay 200.
No, it's really good, but if you take your money and run it away.
You'll lose the 4% because you will get that.
So the answer, the logical answer, although you guys are playing it out well, which is why I said 249 and 100, so you didn't get into the, oh, wait a second, the interest is gonna take it up over the balance. Now you're- The general answer is, Charlotte's gonna go, look, I'll go back to my original $100,000 and it's Garrett and it's insured up to 250. So you're gonna go, well, that's a stupid question. I'm gonna give it to the Bank of Ed all day long, because why wouldn't I? I get 4% versus 0.5%, it's FDIC insured, the Bank of Ed is going out and making loans to Russian oligarchs, I don't really care, as long as the federal government's insuring my money.
Totally sure, regardless, and you have more person.
So who else has a moral hazard here? Charlotte.
What?
She wants her money safe.
Well,
Makes money.
No,
Or makes money.
she doesn't care who the money, who they're in bed with, she just wants her money. So
Is that a moral hazard? You can get it, that's a logical thing, right? You gotta
how is
get
it,
more-
yeah,
more-
how
more
is
hazard.
that moral
They're
hazard,
not
right?
being illegal.
Does she know
Yeah.
or something?
It's not legal, it's just a bit risky.
so you're trafficking.
But
Whoa.
That's illegal. That's illegal.
I don't say a moral hazard is trivial.
Yeah, because it's benefit not great.
Because either way,
It's not perception.
But why, if I said, okay, there's no FDIC guarantee.
okay, then that's very moral hazard.
If there's no FDIC guarantee now, are you gonna give your 0.5% to Joe and US Bank, which has a very diversified bunch of loans? You're gonna give it to me, it makes loans to Russian oligarchs, 4%. No FDIC guarantee.
For both,
Yeah, for both, no FDIC guarantee. Which one are you gonna give your money to?
absolutely.
See, your leverage is probably like 2.
I know, but why? That's the question. Why would you do it?
4%,
But there's no backup anymore, so you.
well, either way,
There is no backup either way.
either way, so I have worse.
But you
They don't
still
have a
lose more,
better.
$4,000?
But if you could lose 100.
And I could, but it's a gamble, right? Well, I'm not a
Well,
gambler.
that's the whole thing, and it's like, depends on which asset you can lose versus.
I know, depending on
Would you
what.
gamble with something that had a higher rate or a higher return?
Is that a high enough beta?
Hey, don't ever make that.
I just answered the question.
Don't ever make that,
I
good
just
to you.
answered. No.
Here's why there's a moral hazard. You don't care. You've transferred all the risk of repayment for you you don't give a crap. You transferred that risk off to the federal government. But if I take the insurance away and go, okay, now where are you gonna put the money? You go, well, wait a second.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So what FDIC insurance has done, just like every good intention, it's created this moral hazard trap where the bank has an incentive to be aggressive because its downside is limited and its upside is unlimited. As a bank manager, as long as I'm operating within the realms of business judgment, good business judgment, or reasonable business judgment, or just hide behind the business judgment rule, I'm okay. I'm good. I'm not going to jail. And if they get outside, I got bonus, stock options, big bucks, no prizes, lots of winning. And if I'm bad,
It made them laugh when you said that.
and if it's bad, I don't care if federal government takes care of it and I go get another job. If you're a depositor, you're an investor. You're a saver, you're an investor. But you don't now care. You're like, I'm just going for the highest freaking number. Because it's FDIC insured, the government's got it. I don't care. I don't need to do diligence. I don't care what you're loaning it. Yeah, I don't care if it's Russian oligarchs or if it's a well-distributed portfolio of auto loans and home loans, and I'm helping poor people and small business owners. I don't give a crap. I just want my 4%. And the federal government, I don't care what you're underwriting. You can go do a bunch of, hot shops and it doesn't matter to me. I just want 4%. The moral hazard is you've transferred your risk and you've transferred my risk onto the taxpayer. So we have no incentive to mitigate the risk. It's what's the highest risk we can take and still be able to meet a straight face test if we're called on that. And the taxpayer bears the burden. That's why you got moral hazard.
Okay.
So depositors will chase high returns on deposits regardless of the bank's security because the deposits are safe. And the bank will chase bigger risks and hope for bigger returns and bonuses because insurance protects the downside and shifts the risks to the taxpayer. There is not a single government policy bias. Not a single government policy does not have unintended consequences and unintended consequences uncompensated.
I didn't get it.
You didn't get it.
Can you explain?
Yes. Every government policy, economic policy, tends to have a shift of risk. It's unintended and it's uncompensated. And so somebody's being subsidized in an unintended way by the sheriff or by the taxpayer, or being subsidized in an unintended way by another person in that transaction stream. In this particular case, depositors and banks are subsidized at the expense of the taxpayer.
I have a question. So this insurance from the banks, right? Is it free insurance?
No, they have to pay premium.
Okay.
There's a premium that's paid. That premium is based upon the assessed risk of the bank and the amount of deposits.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So when the bank examiners come in, they assess the risk of the bank, and we're going to talk about how they do that. In fact, we're about to get there. And they go, okay, based upon this risk, based upon your CAMEL score, we're going to give you this much per 100,000 of deposits as your premium.
I thought it was all free.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. But normally the premiums are inadequate to cover the losses. The FDIC generally does not. It operates normally unlike a real insurance company. It generally cranks along in times like this, it's building reserves. Then you get a 2008 and it wipes out the reserves plus a lot more. And so it never quite fully compensates for the normal hazards associated with the risk associated with the underlying loans. And they keep trying to tinker with it, but every time they do, people go, well, wait a second, I can't pay that much in deposit interest or
deposit insurance.
So bank life cycle. How does a bank get born? How does it grow up and become a strapping, healthy bank? And then how does it die? And so they're generally chartered by the feds or the state. That includes credit unions, savings and loans. So every bank that's out there is either state or federally chartered. Every credit union, state or federally chartered. Every savings and loan, state or federally chartered. And that determines both whose regulations they have to operate under and where they can operate. So limitations on ownership. So banks can't be owned by anybody. They normally have to be owned by individual shareholders. However, there's this special happy group of banks called industrial banks. Utah is the master of industrial banks. I think there's a couple other states that allow them. Utah is the master of industrial banks. And those are banks that are owned by industrial companies. So the most famous example was Walmart tried to start a bank in Utah.
Really?
So Walmart would own the bank.
For real?
And they said, well, this is awesome. People put branches in every little Walmart. People come in and cash checks and make deposits. This would be for flipping nifty. Well, a lot of states said, no stinking way you're operating your Walmart bank in my state. Because it's across the state lines, it's got to be federal. I don't want I don't want this industrial bank thing to hold. That's not what it's designed to do. It's designed so they can have deposits and loans to fund industrial development. So industrial banks have not really taken off here in the States. They're actually relatively more popular in Europe and in Asia, where you tend to have bank holding companies like Mitsubishi has a bank holding company, and they also have manufacturing. They have in their Keiretsu, they tend to have a lot of interrelated businesses. They're underwritten by regulators to ensure that they're adequately capitalized and have solid business regulatory plans. So before the bank can open, there needs to be a business plan put out. The feds are going to look at it, or the state is going to look at it, do you have enough capital? Do you have qualified management? Do you have adequate processes? What's your underwriting approach? And so they're going to walk through every one of those things and try and come up with reasonable answers. And then they're going to go, okay, open the doors. And with the open the doors, they're going to go, okay, you got a regulatory environment. We're going to make sure that all the things that we looked at here continue to hold. Otherwise, we're going to go back to what happens when a bank goes bad. We're going to start shutting you down. So the regulatory environment includes state and national agencies, depending on where you're chartered. So generally, your federally chartered are going to be looked at by federal agencies, FDIC, OCC. OCC is the Office of Comptroller of the Currency. It's kind of the Fed. FDIC is the insurance folks. The regulations are usually complementary. So state and federal regulations are normally both out there. OCC and FDIC regulations are out there sometimes, and are usually designed, and I'll use OCC and FDIC, they both tell you how to run your bank. Here's regulations to run your bank. They normally complement each other. Sometimes they don't. For those of you who have been in the military and have multiple regulations, so you got DoD regulations, and you get Department of the Army regulations, and you know that they may be different, and generally be more restrictive regulation controls. And if you're in a joint situation, normally if you've got Department of the Air Force, Department of the Army regulations, and you're looking at both of them, and you're in a joint command, the tougher of the two regulations is generally going to be what controls, unless there's a different control agreement. Same thing with banks. Your most stringent are going to control. So if you have a conflict between OCC and FDIC, the more stringent regulation controls on things like how much cash you can have, or hours or number of signatories on a vault access, or something along those lines. So you're going to find some conflicts, but those conflicts have tended to be reduced over time. Rulemaking tends to create unintended consequences. They work through those. So your federal folks is that alphabet soup of OCC, Office Comptroller of the Currency, OTS, Office of Thrift Supervision. Those are going to be the folks who deal with the savings and loans. The FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the NCUA, the National Credit Union Association, the Federal Reserve, the Farm Credit Administration, and Federal Home Loan Bank, Federal Housing Administration. I think there's several other alphabet soups. If you're making a loan, Small Business Administration, if you're making a loan and you're using federal government backing or using federal government money, you're likely to be federal government regulated. And so if you're making farm loans, ag loans, you're going to end up with Farm Credit Administration on top of all those things. Because the federal government will provide incentives for you to loan into agricultural and farming. For instance, student loans. On top of all that now, you have Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, my favorite people, the unconstitutional Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, who overlook the bank's interactions with the consumer. So regulators, when they come into a bank, and if you know anybody who's a banker, and they talk to you about the bank examiners and the regulators and the auditors, because the bank will have internal auditors that'll come in and audit before the regulators get there to do their audits. You're under constant threat of or actual audit. The regulators review the assets of the bank, loan by loan by loan. The whole loans. We want to see the collateral. We want to see that you've perfected your collateral, which means that if it's a car, that you've got the title, or that your name's on the title, or if it's a mortgage, that you've actually filed the papers to perfect the mortgage. Your procedures and controls, cash controls, underwriting controls. They want to look at the training and management. So a lot of you, if any of you have ever been in banking, or if any of you go into banking, you have constant training. Because that helps with their audit. So we'll send you to this training, that training, another training. You're going to have training all the time. Portfolio composition. Not too much concentration. We're going to look at things like Community Reinvestment Act. Are you in compliance with the Community Reinvestment Act? Are you making loans into all the areas you're supposed to be making loans in the adequate amounts? Are you too heavy in real estate? Are you not heavy enough in C&I? Are you too concentrated in residential? They're going to look at all that to make sure that you don't have too much concentration risk in any one given area. How do you underwrite loans? How do you look at credit? How do you score credit? How do you decide whether to extend a loan or not? How much are you willing to lend against collateral? What happens when a loan goes bad? How much do you actually get for the collateral? So if you said a house is worth $200,000 and you had foreclosed on it, you got $150,000, and you did that a dozen times, the bank examiners are going to go, you don't know how to, either your appraiser is bad or you don't know what the heck you're doing, and you got to take a look at your collateral because you're not able to liquidate your collateral for the values that you say you can. They're going to dig into the operational elements as well as the financial elements. Operational being things like how fast can you foreclose and monetize collateral? How do you handle checks? How do you handle cash? How do you handle bank opening and closings? If you have a short or an over, how do you do the investigation? In addition to, are these loans good? Are these loans not good? Are these deposits good? Are these not good? Are you laundering money? Are you doing any of that kind of stuff? That's all part of the regulatory process. And we're going to come in and it's like a full physical exam. And you get it from all the alphabet soups. FDIC and OCC will do separate regulatory reviews. FHA will do a separate regulatory review. SBA will do a separate regulatory review. And they're going to do it on predominantly the areas that they're responsible for, the OTS and OCC and FDIC will do it on, and NCUA will do it on the entire bank. For credit union, those other areas will tend to focus more on the loan processing for the areas in which they're touching, but they'll also test and or rely on the other exams to be able to know what's your controls environment. So banks must hold at least a 5% capital cushion, basically equity needs to be at least 5% of the total amount of deposits. So if you got $1 million in deposits, you need to have at least $50,000 worth of equity. Or $1 million of assets, you need to have at least $50,000 worth of equity. You can't have all of it in deposits. There's got to be a cushion there. So in case those loans start going bad, and you got to have adequate reserves and all that other stuff, they're going to test that. And over and above that, you got to have a cushion of equity. If it falls below 2%, they seize the bank. Now, normally it's above 5%, then all of a sudden it goes below 0 because they take big loan losses, do a bunch of reserve write-offs. But at the end of the day, if it's below 2%, they're going to shut it down. So if your 50,000 goes down to 20,000 because you took a $30,000 loss on your $1 million worth of assets, they can shut you down. The Basel Accords are worldwide accords that were signed in Basel, Switzerland. We're on Basel III now. That basically have ratcheted up the requirements for capital in banks. So for Basel, you're up to, I think, 8 or 8.5% under Basel III. If you're below that, you're considered at risk. And so you're supposed to get increased regulation from your host country. And the reason for that is now banks are so interdependent and countries are so intertwined in their financial and banking systems that they said we can't just let a country stand alone and do their own banking regulation. We actually need to coordinate banking regulation, and so we use the Basel Accords to be able to do that. And right now we're in negotiation on Basel IV.
So three went out, I think, a couple of years ago.
And we talked about this. If a bank goes bad, they get seized and sold, or run in receivership, which means the government runs it off. They can't find someone to buy it, then they essentially will mail checks to you, here's your deposits, they'll put it in some other bank, and we're shutting down. So Basel Accords, as I mentioned, are an international framework for regulating banks because the banks are all interdependent. Just mention that.
I'm ahead of myself.
So they look at, Basel looks at things like beta. I'm serious. They actually dig into and risk analyze the bank in terms of how much risk do they have, how much is the market risk, what's the average, are they above or below average? If they're above or below average, they go the required return or the required buffer needs to be higher or lower. So they go, hey, an average bank should be at 8% or 8.5% with cushion. But if all your loans are being made to the U.S. government, you can take that down. Your beta is lower. If all your loans are being made to a bunch of startup companies like Silicon Valley Bank, so you're getting a bunch of startup companies, you got a higher risk portfolio of loans, we're going to ratchet that up higher, maybe 10 or 11%. So instead of just going, okay, you got 5%, and if it's below 2%, it's going to go bad. They're going, hey, 2% might be fine if your entire portfolio of loans is like low risk sovereign bonds. But if your entire portfolio of loans is made to high risk or relatively high risk folks, 10% might not be adequate. So they start using this cool stuff like CAPM to determine how much risk you should have on your portfolio, what the required volatility, or what the volatility is expected to be, what the required cushion needs to be from an equity perspective. See, it all comes back. You can't escape the fundamentals. Risk, cash flow. Risk, cash flow. U.S. banks are generally subject to Basel requirements. We operate in the international banking system. We are the largest capital country in the world. The largest banking system in the world. We are the linchpin around which a lot of things we catch a cold and Europe gets the flu. I mean, we're pretty critical to the banking system, and we impact other areas disproportionately. So U.S. banks are also evaluated on CAMELS. CAMELS is used to verify or used to identify weak areas and prescribe fixes. CAMELS are rated, each one of these things is rated 1 to 5. So folks go in and the banks, when they do their analysis, they evaluate each of the 5 elements of the or the 6 elements of the camel, and they come up with a bank, with a bank rating. So it's nearly impossible for you to find out what your bank's camel's rating is. Why?
You're not gonna, if you get on the book, it's, everybody's gonna try to go to the highest rated one, that's gonna leave a lot of the other ones.
Yeah.
Out of the money.
Yeah.
Kind of like Netflix, nobody watches the 1-star.
That was a big analogy.
Nobody watches Netflix in the house anyway.
Yeah, nobody watches the 1-star, nobody wants to be in the 5, nobody wants to be in the 5, in the one that's a 30-rated camel.
Oh, exactly what you're saying now, okay. With any movie, you know.
Yeah, nobody wants to be in the 5-rated camel, or in the 30-rated camel. And so camels is capital adequacy, asset quality, this is what the regulators look at, management quality, earnings, liquidity, and sensitivity to change. And so when the regulators come in, they evaluate across these 6 parameters, assign a score 1 to 5, and depending on that score, will determine the work with management. You go, take this up, take this down, adjust it right or left. This is best practices, but you will never know. Any questions?
One quick question.
Eddie?
What
They hired for that job, right?